5:59, according to my computer. Call the meeting to order. Michelle is excused this evening. All of the board members are present. And first up, we're going to start with the August 22nd public meeting minutes. Any edits?
Motion to approve the August 22nd meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted. Next meeting is September 26th, back here at Belmont High School. Public communication and correspondence. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to board member reports. Mark, want to start?
I don't think I have anything right out of the start gate. Oh, there's some tired kids at home, but.
Nothing? The only thing I have is that for the withdrawal study committee, we published the survey results with the last meeting minutes, so they're out there if anyone wants to review them.
Are they published anywhere, or just
On the
flashed?
website,
Okay.
so I attached them to the meeting minutes.
All right.
Yeah, nothing.
The only thing I would add is, I forget the date, but maybe the 29th, the the school district's breakfast, welcome back breakfast or whatever. Able to go to that, Michael spoke for a little bit, welcoming folks. But it was nice because I got a chance to see, some faces to the names. There's definitely some new people at the different schools, and although I'm gonna remember probably less than half of them, I at least at that moment got to hear, all the new people and got to see people that were coming back and everything, and it was a good event. All right. Principal reports. In the packet, we have Canterbury up first. Questions?
I had a question.
Okay.
In looking at the assessment data, so if I'm reading this correctly, it follows the same class for 3 years.
Correct.
And then, so during COVID, they do well. During hybrid year, they do better, and then they significantly drop when they come back? That's my question. That kind of
Yep.
seems
Yeah, I
like
found that
against
number.
the trends that everyone had been saying.
So 2021 was the year they were cohorting, the hybrid year.
Okay.
21, 22 was when we were back in person for the full year. And we had a new math program, which I thought was noteworthy. And then last year was year 2 with the math program, and obviously we were in person for the full year. One thing to note, we did have a couple of students move in that weren't with us before. So it's not the exact same children, but it's the same class, if that makes sense.
Can you give us the number of new students brought in? I mean, that might help kind of
Yeah, that's a
reconcile the.
significant drop.
That's yeah.
Yes, that's why I'm coming to you saying we need to have a math tutor. We need to be able to support our tier 2 learners, which are considered below proficient. I talked to Silas about presenting data for CES because we want to be sensitive to the fact that our numbers are really different than the other schools. And so when we talk about specific numbers, sometimes it can be easily determined which students we're talking about. So we kept it to percentages. But we did have a couple of new students. I wouldn't say it was a large amount, but in Canterbury, because of the size we are, that can make a significant impact. But regardless of that, what this is showing is that we do have the need that supports what I'm going to be requesting, which is the ability to bring on a math tutor to provide those additional supports for students.
Do you see similar results in the 3rd grade and 4th grade classes?
So we picked that group because they had done 3 years of state assessments and we could follow them. Our staff is starting our PLC process. We actually started today after school, looking at all the grade levels that take the state assessments. But for the purposes of this report, we chose 5th grade because they had done it 3 times and we could follow them for that amount of time.
Do you have all of those numbers for each the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that maybe we could see, just kind of see the differences in the classes? Or just a little bit more information?
Silas puts together a whole district-wide
Okay.
SAS results for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Was it an increase in class population by like 10 or so? Or
No,
are we
it's-
not talking that many, or?
It's the fact that we had some new students with significant needs come in, but no, it wouldn't be that many at all.
Okay, cause I mean, if you go, I mean, if you just went round numbers, you know, at 25 students, if 70% of them were proficient, you're at 17 and a half. And then to get down to, you know, to 30%, you're 10 of those students are then going backwards.
Yes, we definitely had some students drop.
Okay.
Because what we can accomplish is the tier 1 instruction. We don't have a method for tier 2 support. Obviously, students who need special education services are receiving those, but that in between for the students who need some extra support to close gaps isn't something that we have formally in place.
What was happening before when they were doing well? So, I mean, 60% and 40%, 70% and 30%. What was the difference, other than those couple extra students? Why were they doing okay until?
I know, it's interesting. Obviously that first year was, you know, they were cohorting, so they were only in person those couple of days, which had its pros and cons. Obviously, they were in a small group setting. This was the class with the most identified students in our building, which is why the following year, when we had a staff member take a leave of absence, I requested that the board keep that position so that we could break that group into 2 smaller groups and provide extra support to them. Many of them were able to be in person 4 days because of IEP or 504 statuses. And so even though we were in a situation of cohorting 2 days a week in person, a lot of our students were getting small group support because of those statuses. And that support went away when we came back in person because we didn't have the tier 2 tutoring in place.
My last question, how many students are actually in this 5th grade class?
The group that just went up to 6?
Yeah, this current, like, roughly.
So the group that just went to BMS and that we're talking about here, when they left, they were at 20. And of course, in the 3 years, that went up and
Sure.
down by a couple either way.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Belmont Elementary School. Any questions? After that is Belmont Middle School. And the high school.
I have a question, Mr. Pooch. I think it was you that indicated that there were some bugs with the locks
Yep.
on the door? what happened with that, since the other schools didn't report that and you all got the same?
It was a hardware issue on one specific door.
Okay.
With the sub-availability, I think the or lack of substitute seems to be a common theme between all the schools.
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion or attempts to trying to get full-time subs in a building?
It's been talked about in the past, but that obviously has to be worked into the budget process, and it hasn't gone too far in the past. But I would love to work that into the budget process in the next few weeks. I'm gonna get some support on that. We'd love to have some in the building, but
Because it's pretty rare that you're not gonna have somebody out of the building on any given day.
that is an accurate statement.
And then they can be used, you know.
As needed. Yeah.
Right, and, I mean, hopefully not double dipping where they're losing,
Sure.
you know, losing lunch and, you know,
Yeah.
and that type of thing, but.
The memorandum of understanding that we have with the teachers right now is something that, you know, we're trying to use, particularly at the beginning of the year, as sparingly as possible. But even in the first few weeks, you have teachers who are out for medical reasons and illness and stuff like that. We get subs as often as we can, you know, to try to cover that, so we're not pulling teachers out of their prep blocks and putting them in for apple blocks, but, we've already had to do it a few times.
What would full-time subs look like? Like, are we talking, they're full-time, they float wherever needed? Are they salaried, are they?
They're
Yep.
hourly employees,
Yeah.
they come in as support staff, and we've talked about this in the past, and so basically one full-time sub per building. You're talking what, around $50,000?
Yep.
For one? So if you were to do it every building, you're talking $200,000 out of the budget. Because with full-time comes the benefits associated with it.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it's a
does
consistency
relieve
issue.
a lot of, inconsistencies, from one sub, you know, to another, whether it be experience or desire or, you know, whatever the situation, you know, may be. They're a known quantity in the building, and then students familiarize themselves with them, and they can familiarize themselves with, you know, with students. And I've been in one school where they had it, and it worked well.
Speaking of budget, you expressed annual concern with the timing of the budget process. Do you have any suggestions or ideas on what could be done to change that?
To be honest, Michael loves this note in my annual board report in September, because I recognize that the process is not going to be changing at any point in the near future. But it's, the example that I give in terms of it being difficult is, in September of 2023, we're tasked with having to budget for a chair that might break in a classroom in June of 2025. So what I anticipate coming from the high school in terms of my budget that I'm prepping for conversations with Debbie and Michael, and then obviously the budget we presented to you, is some higher numbers this year, you know, for operating budgets. Because we've run ourselves into situations where the school year just started. We started talking about our budget before students were in the school. And to have any degree of accuracy in some of the lines is absolutely impossible. You know, replacement equipment, repair and maintenance, and things like that, we give it our best shot, and we look at obviously the actuals from previous years and try to guesstimate. But it's a difficult process.
Right. Other questions for the high school? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is 2024 April vacation softball trip. And I believe Mr. Clary is here. I don't know if there's anything you want to present. You have information, but.
You have all the information. I'm here to answer questions the best I can. It's still up in the air with who we play if we go down there. Berlin's waiting to hear from us if we're definitely going, before they make the decision if they go.
How many students are involved?
Good question. I'm hoping at least 15, but probably realistically gonna be around 13.
And this is during vacation, so students wouldn't miss
Correct.
any school.
We have, the last 4 years, we have not been able to play any of our scheduled games during April vacation because so many families go on trips. So I'd like to get this out there as soon as possible if this is gonna happen.
Any concerns of students not being able to pay what will end up being their portion?
Well, that's why I wanna get it out to them as soon as possible so we can do the fundraising between now and then. I don't know how much I still have in my softball account, but I think it's around $3,000 or $4,000. And obviously we would help any of the students that needed it.
I guess it's a question for Michael and Debbie. I'm just not clear on, does the district have liability if anything were to happen? And how, like, that's my only concern is I do not want anything bad to happen, but if it were, what?
How does this differ from when we approved people to travel overseas? Like, wouldn't it be the
So I
same
think
issue?
we use a company typically, don't we?
They usually use a company when they're going to overseas travel. The only thing I see with problem here is because this is a district-sponsored athletic, the rental van may potentially be a problem. We can't get that covered through Primex because it would be more than a 9-passenger van.
The only other note on that, the company that we'd be going to play at, it's a softball complex, they have a travel agent that is willing to book those types of things for us, including the airfare. So I could check with them if that would, enhance our liability coverage, if we had them book it instead of us booking it individually.
But who would be driving the van?
It would have to be a coach.
So Primex is gonna be looking at that.
You need a, would you,
So is
I
there
don't know
any-
I don't know what the number is for a school bus designation, but.
Well, I don't know if they would even honor a school bus driver license out of state.
Gotcha, yep.
How do other schools do this? I mean, I know that Guilford went to Pennsylvania,
I don't know, a lot of them will book a, transportation company to provide the transportation, because they have all the licenses and they have the requirements. I would assume that's how they would do it. I can't imagine that they're gonna let them go down and get a 15-passenger van if it doesn't meet code.
But Primex would let us get a 9-passenger?
9-passenger is not considered a school, so
Right.
that 9-passenger is fine.
So that would
So
actually
you would have
work
to
better
get-
for us, cause I don't think we're all gonna fit in a 15-passenger van, so we were thinking we'd have to rent 2 vans anyways.
Yeah.
I think bottom line, we'll work with Coach Claire to mitigate any liability issues that we'll have in order to make the trip.
Alright. Other questions on? Alright, it's up for action.
Motion to approve planning for the April 2024 vacation softball trip?
Second. Just an amendment to this would be basic permission to travel on.
All right, permission to travel.
Yep.
Just amend that.
Exactly what she said. Okay, so that was my question, is whether or not we were.
Well, other ones we approved planning, so. I was just
Right,
going
yeah.
with- but we didn't approve.
So we're.
Yes. So is this the first phase of that?
This one can be a permission to travel since it's not an international
Okay.
trip.
Motion to grant permission to travel to the April 2024 vacation softball trip.
Further discussion?
How far away are they planning on, or would you be staying from the,
It's less
from
than
the
2
fields?
miles.
Okay. And this is down on the Space Coast?
Yes.
Yep.
Anything else? Alright, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you.
And we have the 2023 girls preseason varsity basketball trip. And Coach Andriski is here as well, if you have questions.
Looks like parents are gonna be driving?
Yes, yeah, we've already had a meeting, had 8 parents that said they would drive and take kids. And any kid that didn't have a ride, a parent, said they would have room for them, so we would sign a waiver. The parents, would, of the kid not going would give the rights to the parents driving, so. And the only cost that the kids are incurring are 2 lunches. Everything else is paid for. We've already fundraised, we have $2,100 in our fund, so everything is covered for them.
Yep. So, the only reservation I have is obviously if kids riding with other parents.
And if that's an issue, they can ride, I'll drive.
Yep.
And they can ride with me, so.
We have all the proper forms that parents need to fill out as part of our transportation, transporting student policy, so we'll be following that as well.
Okay.
And then I'm assuming because they're losing a day of school, that they make that up somehow? Or?
They could, whatever what would you need them to do?
Well, I don't know, I just don't know what happens when they miss school for an athletic reason.
Oh,
Like, I know if a child is sick, they have to work with their teachers to.
Mr. Finch?
I'm happy to answer that, particularly with things that are planned in that level of advance. Teachers are just informed about it, and the kids we could use TLT, we can do things like, depending if they have an assessment that day or whatever. If it's one day, it's an incredibly easy thing for us to coordinate, especially when teachers know that far in advance. It would not be a concern of mine. I support the trip fully.
Other questions? All right, this is up for action.
Make a motion to approve travel on the 2023 girls preseason varsity basketball trip.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're leaving already?
Sorry.
All right, next up is.
Thank you.
Next up is the business administrator report.
So the first thing I have is the appointment for school care employer representative. This is something that is done on an annual basis. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Need a motion?
Where are we on the?
Motion to appoint
On
Debbie
the agenda, what
Thompson as
page?
the employer representative to the school care annual meeting and Lori Callan as the alternate.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And we also have budget development.
I have nothing to add. The attorney, as I stated last time, the attorney approved the calendar, and that was final sent out to all the board members and administrators.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Way in advance, and you're not gonna be able to give me an answer. And you probably won't be able to give me an answer when we start the budget process, but I wanna ask a question because I think it's important. If somebody were to walk up to me and say, I don't want the school portion of my taxes to go up. The taxes are crazy, blah, blah, blah. What are we looking at as a district, as a school board, for a budget that would not impact the taxes?
There's
I mean,
no way to know at this point,
Yeah.
for a couple of reasons. I don't have any numbers from the state for revenue, and even if I do have them, they change anyway. We won't have a final, fund balance amount for the following year. So it would all be estimates, and I'd have to wait when they set the tax rates in October or November, then I could do the calculations and come up with that. I won't have that number
I
for a
just
while.
feel like there would definitely be estimates, guesstimates. You probably need the tax rate information, but I
But
think
given
it's-
the amount of money that we're turning back as fund balance, you'd have to cut your budget to have no tax increase.
I just wanna know,
Mhm.
like, a ballpark.
Yeah.
Are we talking 200,000, are we talking 5 million? Like, I don't know, I have no concept of what that amount is. But I just think it's worth
Yeah,
a quick
and,
discussion.
yeah, and also the fact that the apportionment between Belmont and Canterbury, very unlikely you're gonna get both to go down.
Yeah, and I
but-
guess I would rephrase that to say either or. I'm not saying go down, just
Right.
level.
Flat.
Right, right, but I can run those numbers once I get all the information.
I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, I'm not
Mhm.
saying it's realistic, it's just, we should have a number, we should have an idea of what we'd be looking at. Other questions about budget development? All right, superintendent report.
Yes, as you spoke earlier, Sean, we've had a great start to the school year. All the building principals and staff that I've spoken with, it's been a smooth start. It was great welcoming the entire staff back on the first day for our district-wide breakfast and some welcoming comments, as well as welcoming our new staff to the district, so that was great. We're off to a great start. We had our first meeting this morning with the administrative team to start putting together a preliminary plan as to how we're going to address school board concerns around competency-based grading and reporting. And I'm hoping to bring a preliminary plan for our discussion at our next meeting. Also, I want the board to be aware that we will be having our student reps return this year, both from the middle school and the high school. And regionally, as a group of superintendents, we coordinated a training that we're working with the School Boards Association to put together. It's gonna be a virtual training on the 20th, so that all student reps within the Lakes region and school board chairs will have an opportunity to get some training as to what the roles and responsibilities of being a student rep are. So that's new this year. It's not something I've ever seen in the past, but looking forward to that.
That's September 20th.
Yes, September 20th. And then I've reached out to 2 potential consultants to help with our strategic direction planning process. One of them is Doug Finn, who worked with us back in 2017. I have been able to speak with him. We had a Zoom meeting last week, I believe, just to talk about some preliminary planning process and so forth. And I've also made contact with Ross Morse, who is a contact through the School Boards Association that works with them as an association when it comes to strategic planning. And I'm meeting with him this Wednesday. So just reaching out, see if potentially what the cost would be, as well as the services that they could provide. That's all I have.
Any questions for Michael? All right, the next agenda item is the organizational charts. Is it just for information?
Yeah, can I?
If you have questions.
I just wanted, there's some corrections on the contracted service provider list that I wanna make note of.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions.
Okay, so, where was it? The Chrisman Physical Therapy, that's 90 days per year. Says week. It'd be tough to get that in there. And
Well, that's a lot of services.
same thing with Ceresc, that's supposed to be 60 days per year, not week. So I just wanted to note those. And we talk about days, those are school days. You take, for example, Boothby, the psychological services are for 180 days, even though we have 178 school days on our calendar. They also attend our 2 PD training days at the beginning of the school year.
So those days are the academic year?
Yes.
School days during the academic
Yep.
year?
So I just wanna make that note. I'll answer any questions about the org charts.
Just looking at BES,
3 first grades and 5 kindergarten, is that correct? Thought it was 4 and 4, but.
I can't see the
Is that
chart, but
true?
it is 4 and 4.
Yeah, it should be 4 and 4.
I just don't know who actually moves down.
Grade 1, Mr. Hill. Chart has Mrs. Hodgman, Mrs. O'Brien, Mrs. Reynolds.
Mrs. Lavoy is the new teacher.
Okay, so Mackenzie LaVoy should be down in grade 1. We'll make that adjustment.
Just to make sure I'm clear on the middle school maintenance staff, we have 2 of the 4 positions are vacant. That makes.
Fortunately, we have a new hire, so it will fill one of those vacancies. It's in process currently.
And I guess, just so I'm clear though, on the district-wide chart, the last one, under Steve and maintenance and ground staff, is this the ideal situation, or is this what we have at the moment? So like 2 full-time CES?
This is what we have budgeted, this is the
Okay.
ideal situation.
Okay, but that's not necessarily what we have at the moment.
Correct, those are positions.
Those are positions. I believe currently for our custodians, with the new hire for the middle school, that leaves us with 2 vacancies, 1 at the middle school, 1 at the high school, and we have 1 vacancy on grounds.
A lot of vacancies for specialists.
Yes. Which we're contracting out for.
Other questions?
What is SYC? So under the contracted services for Dunstan, it says 40 days at SYC.
Spalding Youth Center.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, that was up for information. Next up is the on the horizon.
I have something kind of unrelated, but kind of related. So the town of Canterbury is doing their 10-year plan, and their public hearings for it fall tonight, October 10th, November 14th, and December 12th at 7 p.m. They're going to be discussing things like how they want to do their strategic plans for development, growth within the community, etc. I did check with my fellow Canterbury members, school board members, to see if anyone else was interested in attending besides me, because it contradicts with them, and at least one other is. And the other has showed her support for asking if we could potentially move the October 10th meeting to a different day that week.
I don't know if I wanna make that decision at the moment without Michelle here. But I think we can definitely discuss that.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up now,
Yeah.
just to start thinking about it, and Michelle said, I'll just give you her exact words. I will not be there tonight as I am traveling with work, but support figuring out how we can make it work, so.
All right. If we could all keep that in the back of our heads, we may wanna reschedule that October 10th meeting.
Discuss that the 26th, make the move then.
Thank you.
What would be be the optimal day to change it to?
I think that would be up for discussion.
Okay,
So
I mean,
everyone-
does somebody have anything in mind, or?
Or look at calendars and see what they come up. Obviously, that Monday, we have withdrawal study committee. So that
It's also
doesn't.
a holiday.
Yeah, it's also a holiday, but we don't rest on holidays. But,
Schools do.
yeah. I was gonna propose Wednesday.
I mean, sometimes what we've done is we've gone back-to-back weeks as well, so we could do like the 17th and the 24th, or 26th.
Well, you'll be doing that for budgeting
Yeah.
anyway.
What's that?
You'll be
That's right.
doing that for budgeting anyway.
Sure, I didn't even look at that calendar.
Is
Yeah,
it
we
okay
might
if I-
actually be able to fit it in.
Is it okay if I
another
make a
night
quick
that we're
comment
already
about
meeting.
this? Sorry to interrupt, but, we are planning to do a student presentation, so the more notice we have, the better, as far as getting students who are able to attend.
Is the 26th enough notice,
Oh, if we moved it to that night?
if we talk about it that night or finalize it that night?
September.
As long as we're not moving it to
Oh,
like the day
yeah,
after.
yeah, sorry. And we do have a PTO meeting that's already approved for Thursday night. Just so you folks are aware.
So we could do like a November or December one too. When I originally thought this, I was gonna ask if we could move the meeting up earlier or restructure the agenda, and then someone brilliantly gave me the idea to suggest moving it to a different day.
I don't think we have a budget or anything up for the, never mind, that's holiday.
And the other thought was if we had a budget
Oh,
meeting.
no, it's not, October 2nd isn't a holiday. We don't have anything the Monday before. I think I put in all the budget stuff.
I think bottom line, we can look at our calendars between now and then and tackle it on the 26th.
Thank you.
Have the decision by that night.
Yep.
All right, September 26th, did you talk to the Belmont
Yes.
town officials?
I did, and they are on for September 26th. What I would prefer, if any school board members had any specific items you would like to discuss, I'd like to be able to go in as a group, board, as well as myself, with items that we could discuss with them. I also asked Town Administrator Alicia Gibson to ask the Board of Selectmen as well to have some items for us to they would like to discuss with us. And I was also informed, which I feel fortunate about, is that the town planner is gonna be attending that evening as well. So I'm sure she'll be bringing some great information to us. But we are on for the 26th.
Okay, so are you looking for information prior to the 26th?
If there's any items that the board would like to discuss, just shoot me an email with those items so that we have them for that evening. And I could send those over to the town administrator, so the Board of Selectmen have an
Yeah,
idea.
so I was just looking, October 10th was when we were hoping to meet with the Canterbury town officials, which some of them will be at this big meeting.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Ken and see if they could do the second meeting in October.
That could work.
Yeah.
Any edits to that? Anything else anybody wants to add?
One thing, on the September 26th meeting, we will be bringing you the staff handbook for approval. We're making, I believe it's one change to do the vacation time, or how vacation and time is allotted for calendar year employees. So I'm adding that to the 26th.
When you say calendar year employees, you're talking not in the CPA.
This would be specific to support staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is the volunteer list.
Make a motion to accept the volunteer list with the noted exceptions.
Question, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
see that our district total is 1,138 students. Say that's up 5 students since past June report. I always like to let the board know or remind the board that your September enrollment report is somewhat still in flux. We consider our October 1st enrollment report as really our start of the year baseline. That's what we use also to report to the state.
Has anyone reached out to yourself or to Erin about historical enrollment for CES? I had to go into the town office for Canterbury the other day, and the town clerk asked me about this and said that the planning board has been coming to him and asking for it now, as they work on their strategic plan. They were under the impression that class sizes were declining. So I had suggested that they reach out to get that information.
Yeah, sure, just so they can reach out to us and we can put it together.
We have, I know I've, in the annual report, it's on, memory escapes me, but I mean, are we still on the downward trend as far as student numbers or total number of students go?
Slightly.
Okay.
There's nothing significant about our enrollment declining.
Okay.
So, slightly down.
Yeah, it seems to fluctuate, like just looking at the high school numbers, I was always thinking we're about 100, but then we've got a couple classes that, at the moment anyway, are showing 84, 85 too. So it's kind of like, so not a consistent number.
It varies every year.
Any other questions? All right. Next up, we have internal policy. Who's going to speak to the policies? But we have 4 of them that are up for first read.
I can do that, since Michelle is not here this evening. So the first one is DIA, and you can see that we made some slight amendments to this, particularly around the fund balance. We added the word "and" in line 9. There's a strike through in line 10, as well as we added some wording in line 16.
Is there a reason why in line 10 it would say may or may not report all fund types in any given reporting period?
If we didn't have a capital project fund, for instance, you usually only have that when you're doing a capital project.
Okay.
And then we also added, it's not in bold though, we added, we're gonna start adding the code to the rules and procedures down at the bottom in the footnotes. So what's new there is code R&P DIA, because we have rules and procedures that go along with this as well.
All right, questions on DIA?
So if there is any fund with monies in it, then that would be reported in any reporting period?
Mm-hmm.
That was the question.
DID.
DID, you can see the amendments that we made in line 16 through 18, as well as 20 through 22. We upped the amounts from 1,500 to 5,000.
Why were they increased?
Prices of things have gone up so much that it's, we're, based on this one, we're keeping inventories on things that are just really just disposable items. They're not really an asset anymore.
Life's gotten expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know, I was just asking.
So is that a decision that's not an accounting thing, that's a decision the district is making?
Mm-hmm. The government has a much higher threshold.
I guess that's my next question. Okay.
Theirs is 10,000.
policy DJ.
So here you can see that we added the wording and/or their designee, lines 4 and 5, line 6, as well as line 10.
Any questions? The last is DJE.
Very similar to one of the previous policies. In line 6, we upped it to $10,000, line 8, 10,000 to 15,000, and line 12, 15,000.
Why the increases?
And the cost of things are going up.
Oh, I thought this pertained to like bid procedures, this would pertain to like Steve being like, okay, it's under 10,000, I don't need to bring it to the board, I can just purchase it. That's how I read it.
So it still has to come, but a competitive bid is not required.
I was looking at the first one, it says not required. You have to,
Right, and a lot of them is,
no, I'm just asking, I mean.
Yep, I mean, we still have the whole approval process and we still verify it against the budget, but with supplies going up, if we're ordering from school specialty,
Yeah.
we may be exceeding or getting close to the $7,400 now.
Yeah.
So that would require me to go out to bid on school supplies for Belmont Elementary School. And it just isn't, it's not really feasible for the types of things that we're dealing with, but we always go back and check the budget and confirm, and make sure that someone's getting competitive prices.
I think for like projects like you're talking about, I still think buildings and grounds could say,
Yeah.
no, we wanna do something different, we want this to go out to bid.
I was just looking at how it was worded, that's
Yeah.
why I was concerned.
Yeah, and most of the things that he's doing now, it's gonna be over 10,000 anyway.
I think to Sean's point, Jeff, it just. and we
Well, I
have-
know
we
the
have an
cost of
item-
everything's gone up, I'm well aware of that, I was just
We have an item.
making sure that, I don't know, I've just seen some
I
stuff.
see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
So I looked at it as
Yeah.
if it's 10,000 and under, they didn't need to go to bid. They
Yeah,
could just say
that's how I
this-
see this wording as.
I didn't
Yep.
see
Right.
that as a permission to purchase per se,
Yeah.
but more that they just didn't need to put it to bid. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's how.
There are some items clearly that would, potentially be discussed at building and grounds, but as for, purchasing our paper supplies, that's not something that we
I
would
just
come
know
to
the way it's
board.
worded here in the private section, it's like a license to go. I'm gonna buy and as long as I stay under that number, I don't have to tell you a thing. That's how I took it.
Yeah, I see that. Like, I'd still like, you're gonna spend $5,000 on paper, I'm still hoping that you're looking at different competitors, and not just taking the first thing you find.
Alright. That was the only question I had.
All right, any other questions on the policies? All right. Next up is Appendix B nominations.
Motions, or is that
No,
just
it's
the
just
first reading,
original.
okay.
What's that?
It's the first reading.
No, first reading.
Oh. Yep. So, nominations are in the non-public.
Yep.
So are we taking action on these? Appendix B nominations?
The ones that have the 9/12 date, yes.
Okay, just the 9/12.
Correct.
We've already done, okay, just wanna make
Correct,
sure.
yep.
There's a lot of information here.
So it'd be like motion to approve Appendix B nominations as presented on 9/12?
That works.
Okay.
And I do wanna point out that there's one that was approved on July 11th that has resigned, so. We do have a replacement for that.
So there'll be another person coming to us at some point.
Correct.
Alright.
I already seconded it.
Okay. Any other questions? Alright, all those in favor of the motion, do so by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. And got a nomination for a 7th grade English teacher. Any questions of a non-public nature that needs to go to non-public? There are no questions or any general questions? Feel free to.
Make a motion to accept the nomination of the VMS grade 7 English teacher.
Second.
Second by
Jill.
Jill. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I feel like we all have opportunities to make second motions because
Public communication and correspondence. Have none. I'll accept a motion to go into